Hi everyone, I'm Daniel, and I wanted to walk you through what happened with the Ironman Innsmouth Conspiracy run from last week. And going off of memory, but I have thought about this a little bit, and I wanted to show you and reconstruct some of the things that happened on Tabletop Simulator for you, although we played in person in Minneapolis. Okay, first off, where did my Zoe deck end up? We were playing a team of Zoe, Daisy, Carolyn, Vincent, and we got a lot of XP. So take a look at the final deck here for Zoe. We have 48 XP. That includes down the rabbit hole discounts. I had to overspend for a couple of the cards. That is, I had to put 2 copies of Charisma in, costing me 8 XP total, and then 7 for Stick to the Plan. But man, those are worth it. I think everything ended up being a lot of fun and worked really well. This was a weird build for Innsmouth because on engage effects are bad. You take damage or horror or a bunch of other random things that happen in the different scenarios, mostly damage and horror. But I just said we have Carolyn, we have Vincent on the team. Who cares? Let's just take all the damage. But that requires some soak, right? So of note, the Lonnie Ritter Hunter's Armor combo worked really well. So I upgraded the Hunter's Armor to have 4 sanity and then have the guard dog effect. The Thorns, I think, is the Armor of Thorns is the upgrade. Expensive. Hunter's Armor cost 4. Lonnie Ritter costs 4. You have to spend 1 resource to heal the damage and horror from Lonnie. So I needed a lot of money in this deck. Thankfully, Zoe's ability does that for you, as well as Carolyn helped out a little bit with her resource generation. A couple of copies of Stand Together. I think Carolyn also had Stand Together. The motivational speech made allies cheaper, and I did have a lot of allies. We rotated through them as much as possible. And then ever vigilant discounting some things too was big. Oh, and on the hunt level 3. So my stick to the plan cards were always those 3 things: ever vigilant, on the hunt, and then taunt. I think I only upgraded the taunt and the on the hunt somewhat in the last couple scenarios, so I didn't have them all the way up. But they were actually quite good. Taunt itself, you expect not great for Innsmouth, but with 4 players, it solved a lot of problems, just getting enemies off of the 2 cloovers, and even if I was going to take some extra damage or attacks or whatever, oh well. So yeah, this was a great build. Now, the one thing that my teammates said was the most fun to watch was the survival knife, guard dog, etc. combo. And I've played this before. It's very strong. I had 2 survival knives out, sometimes a brand of Cthugga, and essentially I had a second turn. The enemy phase was a turn for Zoe to just like destroy any enemies that were left. But honestly, sometimes during the investigator phase, I just didn't even take actions, or I took actions just to get attacked to use guard dog or whatever else. It's kind of weird because you're like, I don't know what I want to do with my turn, because even using the survival knife, the top action there during the investigator phase is not great. It's not bad, but it's not great. I did want to put a enchant weapon in the deck to make that a little better, but I couldn't find the time for it, as we'll talk about in a little bit. Would have cost me 4 XP, and I wanted to do other things instead. Yeah, no, I mean, this was great. Beat cop with bandages around, or emergency aid, or the what's the what's Vincent's surgical kit. Yeah, like everything worked out just as expected. And there was one funny moment where we were at the end of a scenario. I don't remember which one, where I stopped drawing cards because I thought I was going to draw Smite the Wicked. Oh, I think this was in too deep, and it would have spawned at the other end of the map. And I said, I'm not going to draw any cards. I'm just going to get here and resign. And indeed, it was the next card. Funny things like that when you play this game. Yeah, so that's my final deck. It was great. I don't have the final decks for the other 3 investigators, but I can sort of talk about them a little bit. Vincent, heavily into Runic Axe. The player who did Vincent told me they were surprised. Like, oh, I thought I was going to do a little bit more flexing and maybe use more of the skills in the deck, but it ended up being mostly Runic Axe, because Runic Axe is so good. A lot of surgical kit, I think, a lot of bandages, and a pretty good amount of cluing too. Vincent can do a lot in his off time, so really, really key to the team. I got maybe one clue the entire time because I was like, I don't know what to do with my turn. There's no enemies out anymore. So I think I investigated at like 2-2 and ended up picking up one clue. I may have gotten some clues from defeating enemies that had clues on them, but I think I just got one clue the whole time, which is not usually the way I like to play. I like to play the cluevers, and I got out of my comfort zone and had a really good time with this survival knife Zoe deck. The 5 off-class cards, Lonnie, really, really key down the rabbit hole for the XP benefits, obviously important, and Spectral Razor helped me get rid of a couple of the annoying enemies. I think there's a few that you have to use a spell for as well, and that was good, along with Brand of Cthulhu. Okay, enough about Zoe. Let's talk about the campaign itself. So I just have some comments about, we did really well overall. We were supposed to do it in 12 hours, and we didn't quite get there, but I'll tell you what we did. So the first one, Pit of Despair, is, yeah, it's going to pop up every time here. We did something kind of special here. Let's just do the setup so I can show you what we did. Yeah, so what we did was we put basically everything so that we created a big, long, narrow corridor. So it looked something, I mean, not quite like this. There's only 2 left here, but it was something where we had maybe one little corner off, but we tried our best to make it just 2 rows. I think we did. And the reason for that was, A, we had open gates from both Carolyn and Daisy, and that allowed us to get around a little bit more quickly. But also, making the kind of circle, so to speak, wasn't so bad. And we got maybe a little lucky that the way out was one of these other locations that we kind of went to last, and the tile tunnel placements for the caves that you can swim to weren't so bad. So that was kind of our strategy. It worked really well. We got all 3 of the flashbacks, the memories, meaning we removed 3 of the tokens, and then we were able to unlock some stuff for the future, as I talked about. So we got a full clear. I think that was 6, I want to say 6 XP is the total, maybe 7, going into the next scenario, which was the Vanishing of Elina Harper. Let's just show you what that one looks like. This is the clue one. And the way this one works, if you haven't played this, you should be playing these before listening to me yammer about things. We had to choose, which is the possible suspect, yikes, and possible hideout. And we narrowed it down pretty well. The way that you're supposed to figure it out is you look at the top number of cards of the leads deck. So we did it where we revealed 1, then 2, then 3, and then 3 again, and then 1 at the end, because that's all the clues we had. Problem is we whiffed on one of our reveal 3. And by whiff, we mean three of the cards that we saw, all 3 cards were encounter cards and not locations or the possible suspects. So we were down to maybe like 1 of 2 on the suspects, or maybe 1 of 3 of the suspects and 1 of 2 of the hideouts. We just had to guess at the end. And we guessed poorly. So what happens if you advance here? I guess it's here. Nope, not there. We had to go here, had to read the scenario interlude, and we guessed wrong. I believe it was the Esoteric Order of Dagon and Zadok Allen, and we guessed, I don't know who we guessed. Maybe Brian Burnham? I'm not sure. I know we guessed Shoreward Slums for the hideout, and we were just wrong. So unfortunately, there's a little bit of RNG in this one, and to be honest, it was okay. We failed the mission, moved on. It saved us a little bit of time because we didn't have to play the sort of second half or maybe the last little quarter of the scenario. So, you know, we did get a couple of VP from locations. I think we got maybe like 2. So we maybe were ended up with like 8 or 9 at the end of this scenario, which wasn't a whole lot, right? Because you have to deal with the next couple scenarios with that 9 XP at this point in your deck. So that was that one. It's okay, right? It's an okay scenario. Now, In Too Deep, however, was absolutely fun. We had a really good time here. And again, this is the one where you have to go through the town of Innsmouth by just sort of going through and getting rid of these barriers and going in this sort of snake-like pattern. Let me see if I can remember any good moments here. I know we got a little stuck up here at one point. One of the party members got dragged back from one of these tokens. So I believe, yeah, the -2, if you fail, move the connection to the east. That was like okay, because we had already gotten rid of most of the enemies, but there's not so many barriers here that's hard to catch up. Now, the big thing in this one is if you can get to here, and then there's another one where it's if you have 5. Yeah, here. If you control 5 or more keys, or if you control 7 or more keys, or both, then you get to read some flashbacks. And now, I've played this scenario a number of times with 3 players and with 2 players, probably more with 2, and I've never even gotten close to that. Getting the 7 keys, I've just been like, that's ridiculous. How are you ever going to do that? And most of these locations have some key, but there's also a couple of keys that show up, one on the location of the hideout, which in our case was up here, and then you need to bring it back to the Innsmouth jail to get another flashback. I'm sorry, that's like completing 2 different things. So that's one way to get a key, but then you also have to come back here for another flashback, and I've never even bothered with that one either unless the key was somewhere around this area, which has happened. I was hoping for it to be Shoreward Slums so I could, you know, just spend it here on the jail. But we got everything. We actually got all the keys, all the flashbacks in this one. And the big challenge is one of the keys has to be from the Angry Mob. And the Angry Mob is in here. And it comes into play with a key. I think that's one of the agenda flips. Yeah. And it goes here. This had 4 plus 16, so 20 health. Thinking about that beforehand, I was just like, there's no way I could do 20 damage. But Zoe did. Zoe did 20 damage when I just sort of babysat the Angry Mob a little bit. It doesn't do that much damage, right? It's not that big of a deal. Around here, while the others went through this direction, and then, this was kind of the most fun part, they got rid of the barriers here, and then I kind of just snuck through and got to the end. A well-timed dynamite blast by Carolyn helped. I think there were a few other enemies here. I think that helped out a little bit, so there weren't so many enemies. I was just dealing with this one for a little while. But I think the combination of like the guard dog, the survival knives, it was just totally possible to do that and then you could move over this way. And this is the point in which I realized that playing with a 4-player group is a lot different than 2-player. And maybe even quite a bit different than 3 as well, because usually in 3-player you got your main cleaver, you got maybe a flex, and then you got your fighter, and it's a little harder to split up because you need the main fighter to deal with some of the enemies, and especially in a scenario like this where there's lots of enemies. You can't really move quickly enough to get around away while one of your party members is just babysitting a big enemy. But in 4-player, you can do it. could definitely do it. The rest of the team could get a lot done while I was dealing with one enemy. And this is kind of the big thing I learned, that look, if there is an enemy that is spawned by a scenario effect, like, you know, a story event, the angry mob showing up in one player, this is your job and your job alone. But also you get other enemies spawned from the encounter deck, right? It's much easier with more players to deal with the single thing that spawns, right? It doesn't scale with the number of players. You don't get 4 of them if you have 4 players, you just get the one. And even though it has more health, it's still easier for one player to deal with their whole turn, rather than having one player, you know, the rest of the team not be able to get away, right? You need everyone to focus on the one problem. So that's kind of an important thing that I got out of this, as well as the next scenarios I'll talk about in a second. So you might have asked also, like, how did we do this so quickly? We didn't. We spent a lot of time on this scenario, but we were having a really fun time. This is also the moment where we thought, yeah, like, we're having a fun time trying to get all the memories. Maybe we can do it. Maybe we can do all of that and get through in the 12 hours of Ironman. We did not. But we didn't care at this point. We weren't trying to rush, because I think we were having so much fun with our decks that we just wanted to play with each other and have a good time, as I think that's the purpose of the game, right? So we all got out. No one died. We killed the angry mob. We got the teachings of the order, which is, I think this one, or no, this one's, you get the +1 maybe, the +1 token. And then this one is the teachings of the order. But this scenario just felt much more manageable with a full team, rather than when I've played it with 2, where it feels like you're just trying to stay ahead of the enemies, and if they catch up to you, then game over. Also could be that I was playing a fighter that was really interested in actually engaging and dealing with the enemies, and that made things easier, but also less scary. Good scenario. I have higher marks on this one than I've had before. All right, let's clean up the board here, and we'll talk about the next scenario, which was Devil Reef. I had the fortune of bringing the cards to set this one up. We all shared which cards we were bringing to the convention and already pre-sort the encounter deck and all that. It does take a little bit of time to set this one up because of the randomization. It looks something like this. And this one also matters. Oh, I took Thomas Dawson for sure. That was a Zoe card. It also matters on this one. Do I hit up again? I think we're good. What order you visit things in. And with the larger team, we thought we were going to split up. That someone would take the boat somewhere, put down some open gates, have them deal with that part of the island, then we move somewhere else. The other 2 investigators move somewhere else. We didn't do that. It didn't work out that way. However, we got pretty lucky with the locations of the unfathomable depths, that they were in places where we kind of figured out that we had most of the keys already, and then we just kind of went to them or didn't go to them. A pocket telescope here was also very helpful. That was in the Carolyn deck, I'm pretty sure. So these require you to have a bunch of clues and a couple of the keys, and you don't know which one unless you look. But we also kind of knew that this was, I think one of these islands was something like this was here, and then we had a tidal tunnel in the way. So something like this, where they're connected this way. And we kind of knew that this was not a location with a key on it, so we said, forget it, we'll come back later. Anyway, eventually, what happened was we spawned the big monster, and we were able to kill it. But we were getting towards the end of the scenario. I think we had maybe 1, possibly 2 of the relics already. And we thought, surely that's enough. Surely we can just have 1, maybe 2, and then resign. But it seemed doable because we had the keys, we had things, we knew what the locations were in the right order. We just had to deal with this guy. And without anyone to evade on this team, this is kind of difficult because you're going to get a lot of damage. And at some point, wasn't quite at this point, I think the Daisy deck did have all the clue dropping happening. The Daisy deck was, I can't even describe it. The clue dropping is just totally busted. 2 research notes, being able to hold that and some other tomes with her book bag, and then press pass. Some turns Daisy had 6 actions. So like the 3 normal ones, the 1 tome action, and then press pass from that turn and press pass from the previous turn. That was just wacky. And I think Daisy eventually was able to evade things towards the end of our campaign. I don't think it was at this point though. So instead, Vincent, who was a pretty good fighter at this point, and I stayed in one location. So maybe we were able to evade once. I can't remember. And then Carolyn and Daisy took the boat somewhere else to finish up and get the last couple of clues and the last relic. And we sat on an island and just had to do battle with the Terror of Double Reef. And I think the Vincent player made the comment, I guess the boat's not coming back for us. And we somehow managed to kill this thing. Again, this is, 18 health, I think? Yeah. And they were able to finish up without drawing enemies or anything that was too bad. I think they could just tank the last couple hits to get the clues and spend them to end the scenario on time. So that was a lot of fun. It was a little bit of a nail biter, and we had the tools. Like, again, with 4 players, there are enough cards in people's hands to make a lot of magic happen. So we full clear. We got all the XP. I think, no, we may have missed one of the title tunnels with XP on it because it's one of the hard ones. It would have 8 clues and 4 shroud or something. We just didn't bother with that one. But we got all the other victory points and all of the flashbacks. So all the relics. So things are looking pretty good, but we were, again, going pretty slow. Okay, let's get rid of everything here. The next one is Horror in High Gear. I don't have much to say about this scenario. This is the car chase one. Other than Zoe did a lot of fighting with her survival knives when the pursuing motor car or whatever else caught up. So I'm pretty sure we got the rules right on this one. The survival knife should kill this guy before it's able to do that forced effect on the bottom. Anyway, 4 HP is not a big deal when they catch up, and then you have 2 survival knives that can both be triggered and do 4 damage back. So a lot of things died. I don't know if what Zoe was doing, throwing the knives, boomerang, I don't know, whatever. It's a funny image. We did really well here. We were able to get tons of clues. By this point, the Carolyn deck had the Ancient Stone Field Agent combo going. It was nuts, just really nuts. And a lot of clues were being picked up pretty easily, which is important for a lot of these locations that require you to get a bunch of clues, either to look ahead, to get victory points, or to not take damage or die. At this point, this is 5 scenarios in. As Zoe, was feeling a little punchy. I think at one point, one of the roads said something like, let's see, yeah, something like this one, where I said, you know what, who cares? I'm the driver. I'm going to take the encounter card and we'll drive the car forward. And I don't care that we take a bunch of horror because I had tons of soak. Not a big deal. Everyone looked at me like I was crazy, but I was having a good time. It was fine. We made it through, no problem. It's actually one of the scenarios where, when I played it before, the Ancient Evils are actually kind of scary. And I know we had Word of Protection on the team, but it didn't seem like we were gonna run out of time at all. We did stop the car even, so it's not quite that. Yeah, I don't know. It worked out really well. Okay, so that's Horror in High Gear. Unfortunately, that was the last scenario that went well. That was the last one. We finally got some bad opening hands, some really tough encounter card draws, and this scenario we did not do much. I think we got, let me see, where is the baby? The baby is the worst one, right? Yeah, I'm pretty sure drawing this into another enemy really just, we were overwhelmed. And here may also be kind of Zoe's folly of trying to re-engage some of these enemies. I took a ton of damage and horror from this, from where's the nursemaid? Yeah, it just a lot of things happened, right? There was just way too many enemies that we got. Maybe we made some mistakes, but we're getting pretty tired at this point. We were able to survive, and we went and resigned out of the gatehouse. I wasn't hoping to do this because I think the scenario is pretty fun, but we were thinking at about the clock. At this point, it may have been about 8 o'clock maybe at night, and we needed to finish everything by 10. So we said, look, we're just going to go through, we're going to spawn Osiris Marsh, we're going to kill him, which puts him into the victory display. He's only got 6 HP. Put him in the victory display, and we're going to go resign before he respawns. So that's what we did. We got the victory point here. I think the victory point here. And then we picked up the relic story assets. And that was it. So we had 4 victory points, and we said, we're done. I'm pretty sure we had some of the other locations in play, like the basement or something, but it was just looking a little rough. Yeah. One of the tough things about this campaign and the scenarios is that if you don't have time to heal, it can be a little tough. The 2 actions for surgical kit really does take up a lot of time. I think we were getting a little behind on tempo for that, but the number of encounter cards that we were drawing, I think, made that just a little bit too hard. So we resigned early. We may have played this even for 30 minutes or to an hour. I know one of our players kept track of that, but we decided that's okay. We'll take our 4 victory points and move on to the Lair of Dagon. Again, it's like 8 o'clock or 8:30 or something at this point. We said, nope, turn 1 resign. Not even going to touch the scenario. And then we could spend our XP at that point and play into the Maelstrom. Now, we had about an hour plus to play this scenario. And the first part of the scenario, you just have to go around and get all the keys. However, we didn't have any of the help from the beginning of the scenario. You're supposed to get the diving suit. You're supposed to get, Yanafle recognizes you as its keeper or something. I don't know. There's a number of things that you can do in the previous couple scenarios that help you out in this one. We had nothing. So the first part, you go around and you get the keys. Then we advance and we get Act 2. I think I can just delete these things. Yeah, here's the diving suit. It would have helped a lot, actually. There are a couple cases where things started to flood out of control. Oh, here's the thing. I need to show you what this looks like in 4-player. Whoops. Okay, I'm going to pause this and reset this up. Okay, let's try this again. Act 2 setup. Yep. Okay, this is what the 4-player one looks like. It is wild. It doesn't look anything like the 2-player one that you just saw, because there's this choke point right in the middle. Okay, so Dagon spawns here. Hydra is here. And they do start to move around, as well as their broods, but you have to go through this middle part. And this map also has another sanctum that's apart from everywhere else. So there's a number of choke points, which makes this a kind of wild scenario. However, because we had no way of getting to the secret endings, it really didn't matter. For the time and the number of enemies and everything didn't really matter that much. We were going to do perfectly well because we just needed to get through this act, and it's all you have to do is unflood everything, it's not that hard. Now, we did very, very well because Daisy got a million clues. Daisy had a million actions. Daisy evaded, I think, one of the deep ones. It probably was Dagon. That was right here in the middle. And Vincent and Zoe just like ganged up. Not with the card gang up, but, you know, did a bunch of damage as we could. So the way that you unflood locations, I think, is, yeah, you either remove 4 damage from an Ancient One enemy, or you spend 4 clues at a lair location. So we evaded Dagon, and then Daisy just moved here and spent all of our clues, and it pretty much took care of almost everything, along with the, I don't know, we probably had 30 damage, maybe not that much, maybe 28 damage, I don't know, on Dagon. So it worked out pretty well. I will say one thing that I learned about the Zoe build it was kind of on purpose, but if you evade enemies, which you have to when you put your keys down on these sanctum locations, they can't attack you. So like the survival knife doesn't do much. So I was kind of sitting at the end only doing like 3 damage per turn, and maybe a little bit more if I had the Brand of Cthugha. But like the guard dog, the armor of thorns on the hunter's armor, the survival knives, they do nothing if you've exhausted the enemies, and you kind of have to in some of these cases. So a little bit of a limit there, but thankfully the runic axe with Vincent did plenty of damage. In retrospect, I should have taken the enchant weapon. That would have been a better move than maybe something else I spent my XP on. So yeah, we won. However, at about 9:45 or so, we were still kind of in the middle here, trying to figure things out, and we were feeling a little like we're not going to make it to 10 p.m. So we packed up and went to the hotel, and we said, we're just going to finish it there. We're just going to finish it because we would feel really bad if we just said we failed Ironman. And we finished, and it didn't take that long. It took us maybe about another 30 minutes or so. We had to, I think we finished at 10:45, but given the amount of time it took us to pack up, we took pictures of everything, and then we had to reset everything up in the hotel conference room. And then we just kept playing for the next, I think it was just 30 minutes. It wasn't too long, and then it felt a little anticlimactic because it felt like we were about to die or things weren't going very well. But as Arkham sometimes is this way, that there's a tipping point, and we crossed that threshold and things went really well after that. So yeah, another thing I think is that we maybe drew some, like the big aquatic abomination enemy, maybe even the Loiger, I forget. We drew these guys that are very hard to deal with if you don't have your main enemy handlers around. But you know what? Level 2 Dr. Maelstrom, as part of that clue dropping Daisy deck, just said, nope, we're not going to draw this. We're going to draw something else. We were so worried about the cultist token, the -3 if you fail, place 1 doom on the current agenda. We drew this a lot. But given that we weren't trying to get the secret ending, there is lots of time. 6, 8. I'm pretty sure we were, I don't know, we probably had 6 or more rounds left when we finished. Because there's no limit to how much you can do on this ability. It's just decrease the flood level a bunch of times. So it didn't take much. I'll just reiterate that we didn't have any other fancy keys, so we didn't get to have a free move. We didn't have deal damage to enemies. There's like a little turret. There's the move one again. There's a purple key somewhere. Here we go. You can automatically evade something, move it. Yeah. We didn't have any of that help, but we were very successful, and it was a fun time. So as sort of a recap, you know, we were pretty close to finishing in the 12 hours, but not quite. Very close. But I would consider it a successful Ironman run for my first time ever doing it. And more than that, I had a lot of fun just playing the deck and with the other players all together in the same room. I think it was just a lot of fun. I didn't feel that tired at the end. You'd think that you'd just be exhausted, that your brain would be kind of melting. I think if I were playing the Daisy deck, I would have been, because you have to count all these actions and whatnot, and it took a while with the clue dropping and picking it back up, but it was very effective. But Zoe was just kind of a see enemy, hit enemy, mostly during the enemy phase. So kind of a good loop to just repeat for the whole day. I needed maybe one day to have a break. Then I felt like I could do this again. I could do it again next weekend. I'm not going to do it till next year, I think, but I would definitely do this again. I recommend having a fun challenge like this, playing an entire campaign in one day where you're really thinking about what's going on, planning. Arkham, even though we made lots of plans, Arkham sometimes just throws wrenches into those plans, and you have to adapt. So some of our cool ideas about splitting up or not splitting up didn't come to fruition, and even things like we deciding to actually go for all the memories was unexpected. I didn't think we were going to do that. Now, some much better players or much more experienced Ironman players did indeed, in the 12 hours, full clear the entire campaign, like several groups did, getting every single flashback, the secret ending, etc. And that's impressive. I think they were playing some really good decks. They knew what they were doing. They moved very quickly. I don't think we were playing at a particularly frantic pace. But if you are trying to do that, trying to practice, it's definitely possible. But for my takeaway, I would like to play more 4-player and see what that is like in some other campaigns. I think that this is unusual, having a map that's totally different with 4-player. But while I thought that the campaign was, and the scenarios were maybe easier to deal with all of the stretch goals in 4-player, then it was maybe more interesting. 2-player, I think, can be very difficult. It can be very swingy. But sometimes I just say, forget it. We're not doing some of those difficult things because I don't think the scenarios are quite designed for you to be able to tackle them all with every single kind of deck. But with 4-player, I think you can do a lot more. And that makes sense. All right, that's my recap. Thank you for watching, and we'll talk about more Arkham Horror and more other videos here on the channel.